January 11th, 1945, Luzon, Philippine Islands. Two American Mustangs slide through bright air with cameras where guns are supposed to be the point of the mission. It's a photo-recon run, get the film. Get home. Don't get cute. Then the sky in front of them fills with Japanese aircraft. Not one or two. A formation the kind of mass you don't trade shots with when you're flying recon. The kind that turns a two-plane flight into a rounding error. And in the next few minutes, one of those support pilots is going to be credited with a number that doesn't sound real: 7 enemy planes in about 6 minutes. But none of that makes sense yet, because by every rule of reconnaissance, this is exactly how you get killed. Here's the core problem. Recon doctrine is built around averages. It's built to keep the intelligence pipeline alive. You don't win glory, you win information. You avoid unnecessary dogfights. You break contact. You preserve the aircraft, and you bring the film home. Because the film is the mission. And a Recon Mustang isn't supposed to be out there behaving like a fighter race. Which is why, even inside the US Army Air Forces, the label sticks just a recon pilot. Support. A camera with wings. Useful, but not the kind of name people say when they're talking about air-to-air kills. Major William A. Shomo is flying with the 82nd Tactical Reconnaissance Squadron, 71st Reconnaissance Group, 5th Air Force. His job is to see what everyone else can't, and then survive long enough to deliver it. So when Shomo's two-plane flight spots that larger Japanese formation over Luzon, commonly described as 13 enemy aircraft, the safe move is simple. Turn away. Drop altitude. Run for cloud. Sun. Distance anything. The Recon rulebook doesn't reward bravery. It rewards living. Except right now. The rulebook is about to fail him, because the enemy doesn't need a perfect shot to end a recon mission. They just need to force a break, push you off your line, make you dump speed, make you climb when you can't afford it, make you drag your wingman into a defensive spiral until you're both out of options. And once a recon flight is defensive, it stops being a mission and becomes a chase. The cameras don't matter. The film doesn't matter. The support label turns into a headstone. Shomo sees the imbalance and understands what it means if they disengage cleanly. Maybe they live. If they fail to disengage cleanly, if the Japanese formation closes and pins them, then the recon doctrine that's supposed to protect them becomes a trap. That's the moment the story turns. Because Shomo does the opposite of what the mission is designed for. He doesn't break contact. He chooses to attack immediately. Not a warning pass, not a hopeful burst from long range. The kind of attack recon pilots aren't supposed to even consider closing to extremely short range and slashing through the formation again and again. Like a fighter pilot who has decided that the only way out is straight through. It's reckless on paper for a reason. A recon aircraft isn't just a pilot and an engine. It's intelligence. Lose the plane, and you lose the film, the whole point of being there, and you risk taking your wingman with you. But Shomo is betting on a brutal truth about air combat that doctrine doesn't like to admit. Sometimes survival isn't about escaping first. Sometimes survival is about committing first so hard, so fast, that the other guy doesn't get the time to turn you into a target. If you want more true WWII stories where overlooked people force the numbers to change, hit like and subscribe. Back to Shomo. Recon pilots weren't trained to win fights. They were trained to avoid them. That sounds obvious until you remember what Shomo is carrying. In a tactical reconnaissance squadron, the aircraft isn't just a pilot and an engine, it's a moving piece of the intelligence system. The entire logic of the mission is simple. Bring the film home. Everything else, ego. Kill claims. Even good opportunities is noise. So the rules are built to protect that outcome. If you spot a larger enemy formation, you don't see what happens. You break contact. You use speed, altitude, weather, distance, whatever keeps you alive and keeps the intelligence payload from getting buried in the jungle. In that world, The most admired recon pilot isn't the one who fought. It's the one who came back with usable information again and again, without forcing the squadron to write a condolence letter. That's why Shomo's decision looks wrong even to people on his own side. Because the moment a recon flight chooses to turn into a fight, it takes on risks that fighters are paid to accept, and recon is explicitly paid not to accept them. If you lose the aircraft, the mission doesn't just fail, the point of the flight disappears with it, and if you drag your wingman into a fight he never signed up for, you don't just gamble with your own life, you gamble with the whole two-plane package. That's the first wall of resistance doctrine. The second wall is social, in any air unit. Labels matter. Fighter pilots are hunters, recon pilots are eyes. The mission is important, but the status is different. Support doesn't mean useless. It means you're not the one people picture when they imagine a man stacking victories in minutes. So when someone from the recon side starts flying like an aggressive fighter, especially in a mission where aggression is considered a liability, it doesn't get applauded. It gets questioned. It gets called reckless. It gets treated like a personal itch that could cost the unit an airplane and a roll of film that might matter more than any single engagement. And the system is designed to discourage exactly that behavior. Not because commanders are cowards, but because commanders have to manage averages. Most pilots who choose to fight when they should leave don't become legends. Most become missing aircraft. That's why Shomo's choice shouldn't work. He's over Luzon on January 11, 1945, in a reconnaissance Mustang configuration built for the mission of seeing and surviving. He's in a two-plane flight, and ahead of him is a much larger Japanese formation, commonly described as 13 enemy aircraft. That's not a duel. That's a situation that should end with a running. Defensive retreat, and a long flight home, hoping the enemy doesn't choose to press. But here's the pressure that makes the rulebook feel thinner than it looks on paper once the larger formation decides you're the target. You don't control the exit. Breaking contact isn't an idea. It's a maneuver. It takes time. It takes room. And it takes the enemy making a mistake. If the Japanese formation closes quickly, a clean disengagement becomes a messy one. A messy one becomes a turning fight. And in a turning fight, your mission, your film becomes irrelevant because you're no longer flying to complete a task. You're flying to not die. That is the trap Shomo sees. The recon rules assume there is space to leave. They assume you can choose caution and make it stick. But caution only works if the enemy respects it. If they don't, you can end up defensive anyway, only now you're defensive at the worst possible time, because you surrendered the initiative and gave the larger formation exactly what it wants, a slow, predictable target trying to escape. So Shomo's logic, dangerous as it is, runs in the opposite direction. If he's going to be forced into a fight no matter what, then he doesn't want to arrive there already cornered. He wants to hit first, hard enough to disrupt the formation before it can organize the kill. He wants to create confusion where the enemy expects a clean chase. He wants to turn 13 aircraft from a single, coordinated problem into separate, panicked problems one at a time. And that is the line he steps over. Not because doctrine is stupid, but because doctrine is written for the most common outcome. Shomo is about to bet his life on an uncommon one. The two aircraft are still moving fast, the distance is still closing, and once he commits, there is no resetting the situation back to recon mission. He angles in toward the formation, choosing attack over escape, forcing the first test of the decision that no recon pilot is supposed to make. They launched out of Mindoro on what was supposed to be a clean, routine job, an armed photo-recon run up the Luzon coast. 2 airplanes, 2 pilots. Get the pictures. Get out. No heroics. No unnecessary turns. Then Shomo saw shapes moving low ahead around 2,000 feet. At first it looked like ordinary traffic. Then the spacing snapped into something familiar and dangerous, one twin-engine bomber with a protective ring of fighters. That's the scenario recon rules are built for. Don't touch it. Don't test it. You're not paid to trade. You're paid to bring the film home. And the math is ugly. A bomber with escorts isn't one target. It's a system designed to force you into predictable moves. If you stay near it, the fighters don't have to be brilliant. They just have to keep pressing until you bleed speed, lose altitude options, and get boxed into a turning fight you never wanted. Shomo looked at the system and made the opposite call. He ordered the attack. That one decision changes the whole geometry. Now it's not a cautious disengagement where you hope the enemy doesn't commit to the chase. Now it's a punch to the mouth fast, close, and violent because distance is time. And time is what a larger formation uses to organize your death. Shomo didn't slide in from long range. He brought the Mustang in with intent, climbing into position to get a shot before the escort could tighten up and start working him over. The first pass is the proof. He lines up on the leading fighter of one element and fires. The fighter doesn't wobble and limp away. It blows apart, gone. And in that instant, the crazy idea stops being a theory, because formations run on confidence. A bomber protected by a dozen fighters flies like something that expects to be untouchable. When a fighter detonates inside that bubble, it doesn't just remove a plane, it punches a hole in timing. It forces split-second reactions. Pilots break formation, turn, tighten, separate, chase anything except calmly holding their pattern. Shomo doesn't let them recover. He snaps into another element and attacks again. Another fighter goes down in flames. 2 kills in quick succession doesn't mean he's winning. What matters for a 2-plane recon flight staring at a much larger enemy group is that the enemy formation is no longer one coordinated machine. It's becoming a set of individual problems. That's exactly what Shomo was buying with aggression confusion. Separation. A fight that breaks into short, ugly moments instead of one long. Controlled hunt where 12 pilots take turns walking you into the ground. But the cost arrives immediately. The surviving escorts reorganize. They stop reacting and start hunting. Now Shomo isn't the surprise anymore. He's the target. And this is the point where recon doctrine normally saves lives before the enemy gets organized. You break contact and run. Shomo can't do that now. Not cleanly, not after 2 passes, not after announcing to the entire formation that he isn't leaving. The small win is real. He proved he can hit first and hit hard. He proved that just a recon pilot label doesn't protect the enemy from bullets. Now comes the part the rulebook was trying to prevent. The moment the Japanese pilots stop being shocked and start attacking with purpose. The first 2 fighters going down doesn't end the fight. It starts the real one, because surprise only lasts a breath. After that, the enemy does what formations are built to do. They reorganize. They point noses at you, and they try to turn your bold move into a predictable death. Shomo has 2 problems at the same time now. The first is obvious. He's still 2 planes against a much larger group. The moment the Japanese pilots stop reacting and start coordinating, they can stack attacks, force turns, and make Shomo spend energy he can't get back. The second problem is the one recon doctrine is obsessed with every second he stays in this fight. He's gambling the mission itself, the film, the intelligence, the entire reason those Mustangs went up. So when the escort fighters begin to peel off in pairs and singles, setting up angles, trying to get behind him, the safe exit gets smaller and smaller. Not because Shomo forgot it exists, but because the enemy is shrinking the space where running is actually possible. Shomo's answer is to keep doing the one thing that prevents a clean hunt. He refuses to become defensive, in a straight chase. The larger group wins with patience. They don't have to be perfect. They can take turns. They can keep pressure on until the two-plane flight breaks apart, until one man has to choose between saving himself and saving his wingman. So Shomo doesn't give them the chase they want. He keeps converting the fight into short. Violent windows, fast approaches, hard turns, quick shots, then out again before the group can settle and bracket him. It's not dogfighting in the romantic sense. It's closer to a hit-and-run brawl in the sky. And it has a brutal side effect. It drags his wingman into the same chaos, because a two-plane flight survives by staying connected. If they split, they become two single targets, and single targets don't last long against a larger enemy group. So Shomo is constantly scanning for the second Mustang, constantly checking where his wingman is, what angles are forming, where the next attack is coming from. This is the part nobody talks about when they say 7 planes in 6 minutes. The clock doesn't measure just shooting. The clock measures decision-making under pressure over and over while trying not to lose the other man. The Japanese formation tries to do what it should do, force the Americans to turn. Stretch them out, and isolate one of them. And for a moment, it almost works. Because once you're in a swirling fight, even a fight you're trying to keep slash and go, you can lose sight for a second. And a second is enough for a fighter to get behind your wingman. Shomo sees the developing trap and makes a choice that tells you what kind of pilot he is. He doesn't chase the easiest target. He goes where the danger is. He angles toward the threat forming on his wingman's tail and commits to another pass, not because he's chasing a personal score, but because if his wingman goes down, the entire fight collapses into a 1 versus many. And the mission ends right there. That's the stakes shift in real time. This stops being can Shomo survive and becomes can the pair survive. Because the enemy doesn't need to shoot down both Mustangs to win. They just need to break the team. So Shomo keeps the tempo high. He keeps forcing reactions. He keeps making the enemy pilots flinch, turn, split, and correct because corrections cost spacing. And spacing is what keeps a formation deadly. And in those moments when pilots are reacting instead of planning, kills happen fast. Not by magic, by geometry. A fighter that's busy chasing can expose itself. A pilot that's tightening a turn can drift into a line of fire. A man who expects the recon flight to run can misjudge how quickly Shomo will re-enter, how tight he'll cut the corner, how close he'll press before firing. That's where Shomo's crazy idea becomes more than aggression. It becomes a method. Close hard, fire at short range, break away, come back through before they can rebuild the box around him. Each pass keeps the fight from settling into the enemy's preferred shape. But the price keeps rising. Every pass costs altitude, airspeed, and time. Every burst costs ammunition. And every second in the fight increases the chance that one mistake, one misread angle, one unseen attacker turns this into exactly what Recon doctrine predicted. A recon aircraft and its intelligence payload disappearing without a trace. The enemy understands that too. They press harder. They stop protecting the bomber like it's a fragile package and start using the bomber as bait, something the Americans will feel compelled to attack, something that keeps them close, something that prevents a clean exit. It's smart. It's what a larger formation should do. So Shomo has to keep making the same kind of decision at higher speed commit or disengage, chase or cover, shoot or maneuver. And the craziest part is that the Recon pilot label doesn't help him here at all. In fact, it makes it worse. Because if the enemy thinks he's just a support flyer, they assume he'll behave like one. They assume he'll break away early. They assume he won't press into the middle of the formation. They assume he'll accept the defensive chase and try to slip out. Shomo uses that expectation against them. He keeps doing the thing that makes no sense for a recon mission, attacking into the formation instead of away from it. And as the fight stretches on, that aggressiveness starts to create something that looks impossible from the outside, brief pockets where the odds don't matter as much as timing. Because timing can make a large group fight small for a moment. One enemy aircraft commits too hard. Another turns to follow. A third hesitates. And suddenly, instead of 13 aircraft acting as one, you have scattered aircraft acting as individuals, each with a limited field of view, each making their own call, each vulnerable for a second. Shomo is hunting those seconds. He isn't trying to outfly everyone, he's trying to out-decision them. And the longer he keeps the fight disorganized, the more the Japanese pilots have to solve a new problem they didn't expect to have to solve today. This recon flight isn't running, it's attacking. That's when the engagement crosses a line from dangerous to surreal. Because once enough enemy pilots realize Shomo is willing to keep coming back through their formation, they start reacting to him as the main threat, not as a nuisance, not as an aircraft to chase away, as the center of the fight. And when a larger group is reacting, not controlling, it bleeds opportunities. That's the escalation. It's not just that Shomo is still alive. It's that he's forcing the enemy to play his game for short bursts at short range where confidence turns into panic quickly. And mistakes show up fast. But he can't do it forever. No one can. This is still 2 against many. The mission is still hanging on whether they can survive long enough to break away with the film. And the one number we teased at the start, the number that doesn't sound real, still hasn't happened yet. Shomo has proven the method can work. Now he has to push it to the edge fast enough to turn chaos into a cascade. Because in the next phase, this fight stops being Shomo versus a formation. It becomes Shomo versus the clock. The clock starts the moment Shomo commits, because once the enemy realizes this recon flight isn't running, the sky turns into a problem you can't outlast. A 2-plane flight doesn't survive a long, organized hunt. It survives by making the fight short, chaotic, and expensive for the other side. So Shomo doesn't mix it up. He slices. He closes in on the formation in a climbing turn, trying to get inside their timing before they can tighten the escort box around the bomber. The first element flashes past. The second. He targets the leading fighter of a third group, the kind of choice a fighter pilot makes when he's thinking about the formation as a machine, not as individual planes. He fires. The fighter explodes in midair. That explosion is more than one kill. It's a shockwave through the formation. Spacing breaks, heads swivel, pilots turn hard, trying to find the attacker. And for a few seconds, the enemy isn't hunting Shomo. They're reacting to him. Shomo uses that reaction window like it's fuel. He doesn't drift away to admire it. He attacks again this time, punching toward a different element. Another fighter goes down in flames. Now the formation is no longer a clean ring around the bomber. It's a group of pilots trying to solve 2 problems at once, protect the bomber and kill the Mustang that just showed up like a knife in a crowd. This is where most people assume the smart play is to break off. 2 kills is already a miracle for a recon pilot. It's the moment where you'd normally cash out. Run home, and thank whatever luck kept you alive. Shomo doesn't cash out, because he knows what happens if he turns defensive now. A larger group doesn't need inspiration to win. It needs time. And Shomo is not going to donate time. When the escorts start to form for a counterattack, trying to come in with angles instead of panic, Shomo shifts across the formation, moving to the other side before their first coordinated pass can settle onto him. He catches a third fighter in that transition. It explodes and falls away. 3. That's the point where the engagement crosses from crazy to structural. This isn't random. This is a method close hard. Fire short. Keep moving. Never let the enemy get a comfortable picture of where you are. But the bomber is still there, and as long as the bomber is still there, the escorts have a center, a reason to rally, a shape to rebuild. So Shomo goes for the center. He dives below the twin-engine bomber, puts his Mustang under its belly, and fires a burst into its underside. It's the kind of pass that feels wrong even to fighter pilots, because it drags you under a large aircraft with multiple guns, with fighters all around it, at an altitude where there's not much room to recover if anything goes wrong. The bomber catches fire. It starts going down. Now the escorts have an even worse problem. They've just watched the protected aircraft, the reason they were here, turn into a burning, falling object. Some of them instinctively stay with it. Some break to chase Shomo. Some hesitate, because no one trained them for the recon pilots are killing the bomber. Shomo pulls up from that pass, and the sky throws him the next test. A fighter comes straight in head-on, firing. A head-on pass is a high-speed coin flip. No prolonged maneuvering, no second guessing. You commit your nose, and you accept that you're going to be inside each other's fire in seconds. Shomo takes it. He fires, and the oncoming fighter is destroyed. 4. At this point, the air is no longer a formation fight. It's a chain reaction. The escorts are splitting, some trying to turn it into a chase, some trying to salvage the bomber's protection, some trying to get the kill shot while they still can. And this is where Shomo does something that looks small on paper, but is huge in practice. He keeps choosing position over anger. He doesn't tunnel on a single target. He doesn't chase a damaged plane into the weeds just to finish it. He keeps moving to where the next threat or opportunity will be. That's what makes the burst possible. It's not just trigger time, it's decision time. He dives toward the first element where the formation originally had the most stability and attacks the lead fighter. It goes down. 5. Now the enemy pilots who are still in it understand something grim. They're not dealing with a recon flight trying to escape. They're dealing with a pilot who is taking pieces off the board fast enough to change the odds before the odds can crush him. That creates a new kind of desperation, when a group realizes it's losing control. Individual pilots start making individual choices, turning too hard, pulling too late, chasing too long. And that's when Shomo gets the kind of shot you only get when the other side is slipping. He drops down in pursuit of another fighter, pushing the chase lower and lower down toward the deck. In a recon mission, low altitude is danger for a different reason. You have less recovery room, fewer exits, and every mistake becomes final. Shomo keeps the pressure on anyway. At roughly a few hundred feet, he closes, fires his initial burst, and the fighter crashes in flames. 6. In any normal engagement, this is where the fight would finally turn against him. Because at this point, the enemy should have organized. They should have dragged him into a turning trap. They should have forced him to defend while they take turns shooting. But the fight never becomes normal, because Shomo never allows it to breathe. Up above, the bomber is finishing its fall. Fighters are scattered. Some are low. Some are climbing. Some are lost in the confusion. And some are now trying to survive Shomo the way Shomo was supposed to be trying to survive them. And there's still one more opening. Shomo makes another pass, one more fast. Close. Violent decision, and another enemy aircraft goes down. 7. In under 6 minutes. That's the number you teased at the beginning, the number that sounds like propaganda until you remember what this actually was, a recon mission. A job built around avoiding air combat, a pilot labeled support, 2 planes that were supposed to bring film back, not stack victories. And the craziest part is that Shomo didn't do it alone. While Shomo was carving through the formation, his wingman was fighting too, staying alive, staying engaged, and knocking down 3 of his own. By the time the last shots fade, only a few of the original enemy aircraft manage to escape into cloud and distance. Now the air suddenly feels empty. Not safe, never safe, but empty enough to do the thing recon pilots were trained for all along leave. Shomo and his wingman break away, engines still running, aircraft still flying, film still aboard. They turn back toward home with a fact sitting in the cockpit that would sound insane if you hadn't just lived it. They weren't supposed to survive that situation. Instead, they just erased it. When the last tracers stopped and the sky finally opened up, Shomo did the most unglamorous thing a pilot can do after a fight like that. He left. No extra victory lap, no chasing stragglers into a trap. He and his wingman turned south, throttled up, and headed back toward friendly air with one priority that still mattered to their squadron: get home with the aircraft intact and get home with the film. That's the part people forget. This wasn't a planned fighter sweep. It wasn't a big escort mission with layers of protection. It was a two-plane reconnaissance flight that got sucked into a fight that should have ended with smoke and empty seats. And yet the Mustangs came back flying. Back on the ground. The numbers were the kind that make a room go quiet. Shomo was credited with 7 enemy aircraft destroyed in roughly 6 minutes a burst, so fast it barely fit the way pilots normally report combat. His wingmen added 3 more, out of a formation commonly described as 13. That meant 11 had been knocked out of the sky before the engagement finally broke apart. Even if you're a supportive commander, those are the kinds of claims that trigger the same reaction every air unit has. Show me the proof. And that's where the situation got almost ironic. Shomo wasn't flying a glamour fighter mission. He was flying reconnaissance. The aircraft existed to record things. The mission itself was built around evidence. In a world where kill claims could be inflated by confusion and adrenaline. This fight had something rare, a strong paper trail of what they saw, what they engaged, and how quickly the whole formation unraveled. The debrief wasn't about celebrating aggression. It was about understanding what had happened, because what had happened was exactly the kind of anomaly doctrine tries to prevent. Recon rules were designed to keep pilots from gambling the mission. Shomo gambled the mission anyway, and somehow came back with both the mission and the kind of victory tally that belonged in fighter squadron folklore, and that forced an uncomfortable conclusion. Doctrine protects the average pilot. It protects the average mission, but doctrine can also become a blindfold, especially when the enemy is good enough to turn safe procedures into a trap. Shomo's fight didn't mean every recon pilot should go looking for dogfights. It didn't rewrite the war overnight. What it did do was shift how people talked about initiative in reconnaissance missions. It proved that support roles don't stay support when the situation collapses into a close-range decision. It proved that a recon pilot who understands fighter geometry and who commits at the right moment can break a larger formation before it gets to use its size. And it reminded commanders of something war keeps relearning. Sometimes the safest move isn't the one that looks cautious. Sometimes the safest move is the one that hits first and forces the other side to react. Not because bravery is a strategy, but because tempo is. Shomo's action didn't just earn him a medal, it became a reference point. A case study that units could point to when teaching pilots the difference between reckless aggression and calculated violence under pressure. And for every pilot in a support seat who'd ever been treated like a passenger, it sent a message that hit harder than any speech if the moment demands it. Support can become the decisive weapon. After Luzon. The story followed Shomo the way the best combat stories always do. It left the sky and entered the record. He wasn't a recon ace in the way people imagine fighter legends' names painted on noses. Long strings of victories. A career built around air-to-air. He was a reconnaissance pilot who had one day where the mission rules collapsed. The enemy gave him no clean exit, and his response was so aggressive it rewrote what support was allowed to mean. That's why the legacy of January 11th, 1945 isn't just the number. It's the category it came from. 7 kills in 6 minutes is shocking. But what makes it stick is that it happened on a job designed to avoid fighting. A job designed to bring back film. Not headlines. Shomo proved that the role you're assigned doesn't define the ceiling of what you can do, pressure does. And his decision carries a lesson that feels uncomfortable because it's true. Doctrine is built to protect the average outcome. It keeps units alive over months and years. But Doctrine can't see the moment in front of you. Only the person in the cockpit can. Sometimes the safe procedure becomes the most dangerous choice because it hands initiative to the enemy. Shomo didn't win because he ignored rules for fun. He won because he recognized a trap early and chose the only move that could break it, commit so fast and so hard that the enemy never got the organized fight they needed. That's not a lesson about being reckless. It's a lesson about tempo. When you're outnumbered, you can't afford a long decision cycle. You either escape cleanly or you strike first. And if escape isn't clean, waiting to be hunted is usually worse than making the enemy react. That's why his story still matters, not because every recon pilot should chase dogfights, but because every support role in war has a moment where support becomes the front line. When that moment comes, labels don't help. Only judgment does. If you want more true World War II stories like this, stories where one person's decision under pressure forced the numbers to change, subscribe to WWII Echo Stories. We don't chase myths here. We chase the moments that actually happened. And thank you for watching seriously. You're not just consuming content, you're helping keep names like Major William A. Shomo from fading into a footnote. If anything in this episode surprised you, his choice to attack, the speed of the collapse, or what you think mattered most in that 6-minute window, drop your thoughts below. I read them, and they help decide which forgotten story we tell next.